Good morning. I'm Kristen McIntyre, and I'm serving as today's service coordinator. And our pastor, Reverend Dr. Leon Dunkley, will provide today's reflection. But first, we have a few announcements. If you are new to North Chapel, welcome. If you are visiting, please consider signing the guest book at the back of the sanctuary. And we have hearing assistance devices and also large print versions of the hymns and the order of service in the back as well. Chloe is leading SE today, and we will sing the children out later in the service, and all are welcome to join. And after the service, we invite everyone to gather in whichever environment you feel comfortable. So some can meet downstairs where we'll have coffee and treats and art making. You're welcome to visit here in the sanctuary or out on the porch in the fresh air, in the cold. There are lots of things going on at North Chapel every week, so please take some time to read the order of service. And right now, the silent auction is underway. We also have the Change the World Kids Anti-Cabin Fever Dinner. And this week, it will be prepared by the executive chef, Matthew McClure of the Woodstock Inn, on Wednesday, March 22nd at 6 p.m. And this dinner will be at the inn at Richardson's Tavern rather than here at North Chapel. But don't wait to make reservations for this one. We also have the silent auction underway, and circle dinners are scheduled for April 1st. So I think, Fran, do you have an announcement? Yeah.
In your order of service today, you'll see it says it's circle dinner time again. And the sad news is that Prue isn't here to make the announcement in her gorgeous, beautiful flowered hat that she uses. So I'm filling in without a hat. But the good news is that the circle dinners, after 3 years of hiatus, are starting again in April. And Polly Fortier will be in charge of the sign up. And I wanted to give you all a little brief history of circle dinners here at North Chapel. In 1986, a couple named Bob and Darcy Riccio moved here from Haverhill, Massachusetts. They had been a very active part of the congregation of a UU church there, and they immediately jumped in here and got super involved, and they brought the idea of circle dinners. So we've been doing circle dinners since 1986. Pretty special. So it was really rough. The last circle dinner was the February before the pandemic started, so that's 3 years without them. So this is very exciting that we are going to begin again. So please consider signing up. It's a wonderful way to make friends and meet new people. We always try to make the circles, which are usually between 8 and 10 people, diverse. Young people, old people like me, people in the middle, so that we all can get to know each other. So Polly isn't here today, and I can't stay after church today, I'm sorry. So the sign up will have to start next week, but please consider it. It's a wonderful way of meeting folks. The hostess or the host would organize with the guests what the menu will be and what each person will bring. And it's generally on Saturday evenings. That can be flexible. So please consider doing this, and we'll get signing up next week at coffee hour. Thank you.
Mary?
So last week, we stood up here talking about the auction, saying that we had we're just a little over 10,000, and we were kind of nervous about jumping to 14,000 as our goal. And Sue Rubel sat back there and said, 15, and we all sort of cowered. Well, our total as of this morning is $15,119.97 through bids and donations. So amazing, thank you all. And we've had 22,904 views I always have
22,000.
22,000.
904
I guess I need to go back to school. And 403 bids, I can get that one right. And we're gonna add some more things tonight, so keep on bidding. Thanks.
Thanks, Mary. I gotta say, if you've been reading the ads that have been coming out on the listserv, Diane and Mary are incredibly creative in so many ways, but they get me laughing every night with what we're gonna do next. It's been really fun. I have a different announcement. In the order of service, it says that there's a meeting after church in the parlor today to go over a survey from the UUA. And I just wanted to explain that this is an opportunity for North Chapel to basically fill out the survey, which is fairly simple, but they're asking for congregations from all over the country to participate in this survey about how we dealt with COVID-19 and some of the other issues that are consequences of that, finances, staffing, things like that. So if you can meet us in the parlor after the service, Leon and I will be there, and we look forward to your participation. Thank you.
Joanne, did you say there's an opportunity to fill out a survey today?
Hey, I'm doing what you told me to do.
Thank you. It's actually really fun. It's a fun way of getting to know our place in the wider denomination. We'll be talking about Unitarian Universalism here, and also as part of the unit that we are all a part of. Welcome, Prue. It's good to see you, my dear. And so please join us. It'll be very exciting.
This year, I realized that I love March in Vermont. I love making the most of the snow with activities outside on sunny days. I love knowing that the sap is starting to flow and groups are convening in sugar shacks and communing and making syrup. I love trusting that spring and summer are coming. And yesterday was a gorgeous day, and my daughter Ella and I headed to the ski slopes. And she skied her first black diamond, the face, at Saskadena 6. And she will tell you that I was more scared than she was. On her second trip down, I was still yelling, "Turn," from behind, as though there was an invisible string connecting us and I could somehow make her turn and make her stop, but I couldn't. And a good friend skied over to me and she said, "Kristen, the great thing is you've seen her turn, you've seen her stop, you know she can do this." And she was right. Sometimes it can be so hard to know how and when to let go and trust in our children and in our relationships and in our faith. But this season has been teaching me these lessons. So I thought I'd share this poem about spring by Ada Limon, this year's Poet Laureate. Instructions on not giving up. More than the fuchsia funnels breaking out of the crabapple tree, more than the neighbors' almost obscene display of cherry limbs, shoving their cotton candy-colored blossoms to the slate sky of spring rains, it's the greening of the trees that really gets to me. When all the shock of white and taffy, the world's baubles and trinkets, leave the pavement strewn with the confetti of aftermath, the leaves come. Patient, plodding, a green skin growing over whatever winter did to us. A return to the strange idea of continuous living despite the mess of us, the hurt, the empty. Fine then, I'll take it, the trees seem to say, a new slick leaf unfurling like a fist to an open palm. I take it all.
What would it be like to look out upon the world through the artist's eyes? Through the eyes of artists like Georgia O'Keeffe or Claude Monet? Through the eyes of Zora Neale Hurston, who wrote a book called Their Eyes Were Watching God, or Herman Melville, who was a Unitarian and who wrote Moby Dick? What would it be like to see through artists' eyes, through the eyes of the soul? Maybe we can only imagine how rich and how loving that would be. Maybe we can only imagine how cared for we might feel, how nurtured. As Sweet Honey sings, you used to rock me in the cradle of your arms. You said you'd hold me till the pains in life were gone. You'd said you'd comfort me in times like these, and I need you now. In Wanting Memories, the song from which these lyrics were taken, Sweet Honey in the Rock describes this feeling of being nurtured so well. How many of us have the dream of being loved so dearly in life? How many of us have at times disparaged this lovely dream? And how often do we find ourselves cleaving to it against the odds and against the grain, holding on as if for dearest life? Can we see life's journey in this way? Can we see through artists' eyes? Good morning and good Sunday. I hope that this new day finds you well. Today is Sunday, March the 19th, the very eve of spring in Vermont. So of course it snowed a little bit last night. March 20th, tomorrow, is the very first day of spring, and I've decided I'm wearing shorts no matter what. Tomorrow, that's in honor of Mike Bachman, by the way. Tomorrow also marks a solemn anniversary. 20 springs ago, in March of 2003, American military forces began an incursion that became widely known by its code name, Shock and Awe. As we light this morning's chalice, as we hold its flame together, may we do so in the name of peace. May we look out for peace with most beautiful eyes. I've got big eyes for you, Lady Day. Lester Young said these words to Billie Holiday so affectionately. I've got big eyes for you, he said. Lester Young, the brilliant tenor saxophonist from the middle of the 20th century, they called him Prez. He was a lovely man. He was an innovator. He was a great and subtle artist. Born in Mississippi back in 1909, Lester Young played his horn for a quarter of a century. He died in New York City when he was only 50 years of age. And in his short time here on earth, he delivered such incredible beauty to the world. He was singular, he was unique. He could play saxophone like no one else. No one could play like Lester Young. Many would try, but none were ever as good. No one was ever as beautiful or as fine as he. In the late 1950s, Lester Young played a blues with Billie Holiday, one that she wrote called Fine and Mellow. She wrote it in 1939. He played and she sang it, and the energy between them was just incredible. It is mesmerizing and tantalizing even 70 years later. Billie Holiday was so incredible, but it wasn't her words. It wasn't the words that she sang that made it so. It was how she sang them. Her words were, "My man don't love me, he treats me oh so mean. My man don't love me, he treats me oh so mean. He's the lowest man," have you got it? "I've ever seen." Her words were these, but the way she sang them makes us see them differently. The way she sang these words meant something different and something new. I don't know how she did it, but I heard her singing so clearly. I am a child of God, blissfully imperfect, refined, and complete. It wasn't what she said, but it was how she sang it. Strangely, it isn't hard to take in the paradox. It's as natural as the rain. All you have to do is choose to see the rain for yourself. Use your soul eyes. Lester Young And the other musicians were all supporting her. Lester, in particular, he was supporting Billie Holiday with love. He was showering her with marvelous melodies and with beautiful flowers of life, sensual and naughty, burning and brash, foolish, sexy and wise. I aspire to be foolish, sexy, and wise. It's a beautiful piece of music. Lester Young is remembered for many things, and this is certainly one of them, and the way he had big eyes for Lady Day. Fellow musician, a man named Charlie Mingus, remembered Young so reverently. Charlie Mingus, the wonderful bassist and brilliant composer and great artist, his remembrance was captured well in poetry. An artist writes, "When Charlie speaks of Lester, you know that someone great has gone. The sweetest singing music man had a Porky Pig hat on." Lester Young was known for his constant wearing of a pork pie hat. A bright star in a dark age, when the bandstands had 1,000 ways of refusing a black man admission. Racism was such when Lester Young was on the scene that artists like him had to enter venues through the back doors for their own performances. A bright star in a dark age, when the bandstands had 1,000 ways of refusing a black man admission. Black musician, in those days they put him in an underdog position. Underdog, a reference to a book entitled Beneath the Underdog, Charlie Mingus's autobiography. The poet concludes, "Tonight, these crowds are happy and loud, and children are up dancing in the streets in the sticky middle of the night summer serenade of taxi horns and fun arcades, where right and wrong, under neon, every feeling goes on. For you and for me, the sidewalk is a history book and a circus. And dangerous clowns are balancing dreadful and wonderful perceptions they have been handed day by day, generations on down." This poetry fascinates me. Such beauty from such difficult experience. The idea that we are dangerous clowns performing in a circus of some kind, balancing the dreadful and the wonderful contradictions that we have been roughly delivered by life. Unable to see things for ourselves. "You used to rock me in the cradle of your arms," they sang. "You said you'd hold me until the pains in life were gone. You said you'd come for me in times like these, and I need you now." So begins the first verse of a song called Wanting Memories, the chorus of which is lovely, you may know it. "I am sitting here wanting memories to teach me to see the beauty of the world through my own eyes. Since you've gone and left me, there's been so little beauty, but I know I saw it clearly through your eyes." This is the refrain. It's a lovely sentiment in its fullness, but I want us this morning to focus our attention just on the first two lines. "I am sitting here wanting memories to teach me to see the beauty of the world through my own eyes." Can we sing that together? "I am sitting here wanting memories to teach me to see the beauty of the world through my own eyes." The eyes have it. Our eyes are so important, no matter how well they function. That's not the point. The point is not the outside, what we see in terms of vision. The point is the insight. And as they say, the eyes are the windows of the soul. This is what they say, and I believe this in my heart. I believe the poetry of this idea. I believe that soul energy enters us like through panes of glass, through window panes, stained and otherwise. The light gets in somehow, and the light gets out again, through windows, through doorways, through walls that have fallen within me, the myth of my own becoming, the idea that I have within me, the idea of me as a self-made man, which is a dreamlike fantasy, a hallucination that I enjoy. And here we have another seeing metaphor, the hallucination. A hallucination is an experience involving the apparent perception of something that in actuality is not present. It's like a mirage. It is an optical illusion. The eyes have it once again, indeed, but this time they're playing a dirty trick on us. What we see, or what we think we see, cannot, in every case, be trusted. Our eyes are not always dependable, not always honest, not always trustworthy. This is one perspective, one way of looking at things. But here's a question for you. What happens if we go in the opposite direction? What happens if we try it the other way around? I am sitting here wanting memories to teach me to see the beauty of the world through my own eyes. And the eyes have it, no matter how they function. The eyes are the windows of the soul. I believe this poetry in my heart. Soul energy enters us and exits us like light through window panes. It gets in and it gets out through windows and through doorways, through an openness that arises in me somehow. Rising in me is the faith of feeling the earth beneath my feet, the once frozen earth now thawing like some fantastic catastrophe of mud and slush in the angled sunlight of early spring, whatever early spring means up here in Vermont. It starts tomorrow, remember. It starts quite promptly at 5:24 p.m. I don't know how they came upon that time, but they did. So look out on the day tomorrow, precisely at that time, and you will see the changing of the seasons. The change will be so subtle, though. You will need great eyes to see it. We will need not big eyes like the eyes that Lester Young had for Billie Holiday. We will need great eyes, and there's a difference. Do you have great eyes? Oh, right. That was beautiful. Do you have eyes that are great enough to see the subtle changes in life? Do you believe that I have eyes that are this great? Tell me more about my eyes. They used to say that Elizabeth Taylor had the most beautiful eyes. They say the same thing now about Adriana Lima from Brazil. Harrison Ford and Alicia Keyes, Scarlett Johansson and Bruno Mars, they are among the many who are said to have great eyes. But what does that mean on a spiritual level, or should we just remain superficial about it? Should we just look upon their beauty and leave it at that? When you think about the eyes of people that you know and love, who among them would you say has eyes that are most beautiful? Looking in and looking out, whose eyes are the greatest? It's important to frame the question in this way. Most of the time we don't. We tend to evaluate the greatness of one another's eyes only in one direction, from the outside, looking in. So once again, I ask, what happens if we go in the other direction? What happens if we were to evaluate the greatness of one another's eyes, this time from the inside looking out? Instead of asking ourselves, how do I look? We could be asking ourselves, how do we see? How do we see? How differently do you and I actually see the world in which we live? How differently do you see the world from one another? Years ago, I came across a fascinating photograph that revealed to me just how powerful a question like this could be. It was a black and white photograph, and it was taken in the 1970s on the streets of London, I believe. On the right side of the frame, there was a dark-skinned man, barrel-chested, wearing denim overalls. He was running, full head of steam. Behind him, and giving chase, there was a bobby, a British police officer with a white man in full uniform, complete with a big furry hat. And he was also running at full speed. His nightstick was drawn. The caption asked the question, what do you see? Do you see yet another instance of racist police brutality in London? Or is the bobby in the right a faithful police officer chasing a bona fide criminal? The great reveal was that the real answer to this question was none of the above. For not featured in the photo, outside of its frame, was a third man who was also running as fast as he possibly could. This third man was the real criminal. The plainclothes police officer, the dark-skinned man, barrel-chested in denim overalls, and the uniformed police officer, the light-skinned man, the bobby with the furry hat, his nightstick drawn, were partners. Both were chasing down the third man, the bona fide criminal. We often think that we are standing on the outside looking in, but very often it's the other way around and we don't know it. Very often we are actually on the inside looking out, seeing things through the lenses of cultural bias. The American philosopher William James once said, "A great many people think that they are thinking for themselves when actually they are merely rearranging their prejudices." I am sitting here wanting memories to teach me to see the beauty of the world through my own eyes. The Matrix is an old movie now. It came out on Easter weekend in 1999. 24 years later, I'm still talking about it. And I'm not surprised, because The Matrix is about the greatest possible adventure of them all, the adventure of becoming one's best self. It's really hard to do, it's arduous. It takes everything we have. Fairly early in the film, the hero, Neo, the main character, is rescued from the world of illusions. He winds up in a hospital bed in an operating room and he's highly disoriented. "Am I dead?" he says. He asks in the deepest sense, but in a way, the opposite is true. Neo has just been born. Remember, this came out on Easter weekend, so there was some resonance. A doctor was working on Neo, trying to facilitate his recovery, and Neo asked him, "What are you doing?" And the doctor says, your muscles have atrophied, and we're rebuilding them. It perplexes Neo. He doesn't understand. The answer doesn't make much sense, but he doesn't push for clarity. Instead, he goes in another direction. He says, "Why do my eyes hurt?" And the doctor says profoundly, "Because you've never used them before." Neo is a full-grown adult. The actor who plays this character was 34 years old at the time of the filming. Imagine that, not using one's own eyes for the first 35 years of one's life. Sounds crazy, right? Nonsense. Actually, this happens all the time. Sometimes it takes much longer than 35 years. It's really hard to see the world through one's own eyes. It's counterintuitive, I know, but truly it takes a very long time to learn how to see. It's hard work not to see through eyes of other people. It's really hard work. It means becoming genuinely present to oneself. It means becoming present to and fully accepting of one's self. And that level of internal intimacy can be very scary, quite challenging. It's hard to settle in and to become inwardly attuned. It's hard to quiet down and to allow ourselves to know our own inmost peace. It's really hard to accept ourselves with all of our imperfections. I, for one, prefer my pretenses and my illusions. I prefer my hallucinations, or at least my ego wants me to. Because the world that my ego presumes to have contained by way of my pretenses, my illusions, my hallucinations, that world is so much easier to control. When I can still pretend that I actually have such a power, I'm satisfied. Satisfied with the world and satisfied with my place within it. When I stop pretending, when I am more honest with myself, I find that my soul prefers the honesty of the chaotic maelstrom of life. I discover and I rediscover that I can find peace in all the badness. I can find great beauty in imperfection. Each of us can. We just have to learn to see with our own eyes. It's really hard work. It's truly an art. And I'm not the only one who thinks so. Artists like Georgia O'Keeffe and Claude Monet would agree, especially Claude Monet, the French painter, because his eyesight was so bad, or so bad in the eyes of other people. I'd like to close with a poem. that was shown to me by a good friend of mine named Bob Williamson. It's called Monet Refuses the Operation by Liesl Mueller. Doctor, you say there are no halos around the streetlights in Paris, and what I see is an aberration caused by old age and affliction. I tell you that it has taken me all my life to arrive at the vision of glass lamps as angels, to soften the blur and finally banish the edges that you regret that I don't see. To learn that the line I call the horizon does not exist, and sky and water, so long apart, are the same state of being. 54 years before I could see ruin cathedral is built of parallel shafts of sun, and now you want to restore my youthful errors. Fixed notions of top and bottom, the illusion of three-dimensional space. Wisteria, separate from the bridges it covers. What can I say to convince you the Houses of Parliament dissolve night after night to become the fluid dream of the Thames? I will not return to a universe of objects that don't know each other, as if islands were not the lost children of one great continent. The world is flux, and light becomes what it touches. Water becomes water, lilies on water, above and below water, becomes lilac and mauve and yellow and white and cerulean lamps, small fists passing sunlight so quickly to one another that it would take long streaming hair inside of my brush to catch it, to paint the speed of light. Our weighted shapes, these verticals, burn to mix with air and change our bones, skin, clothes to gases. Doctor, if only you could see how heaven pulls earth into its arms and how infinitely the heart expands to claim this world, blue vapor without end. We must learn to see through our own eyes, the eyes of the greatest artist, which is to say that we must learn to see for ourselves. I am sitting here wanting memories to teach me to see the beauty of the world through my own eyes. Can we sing this part together? May it be so. Blessed be.